still a little smaller than my mom. She would wake me up early and she'd take me along in that old white Rambler station wagon we would ride. Well, I didn't know it then, but I felt content and worthy by her side. Oh, oh. She'd say, when all our work is done, I'll take you to Howard Johnson's and we'll share a chocolate soda. Isn't this fun? And she never even worried about the rain on our windshield. We just kept right on driving till we saw nothing but strawberry fields. And the man at the field would show us where to park the car, and we would bring our own baskets, and we would not walk too far. And that was the only time we spent together on our knees. Just the green vines, red berries, the gray sky above Mom and me. And she loved me more than strawberry fields, and she loved me much better than the berries by our heels. And she loved me more than summer rain, and I so often wondered if I would ever feel that way again. Oh, feel that way again. We would take all our strawberries home into the house. We would wash them and cut them up, and we'd lay them out. And I ate all I wanted, and it wasn't any crime. We would freeze all the rest so we could eat strawberries in the winter time. And she loved me more than strawberry fields, and she loved me much better than the berries by our fields. And she loved me more than summer rain, and I so often wondered if I would ever feel that way again. When my mother was the age that I am now, and she wanted much more for me than what I would once allow. But I found that my favorite way to save her memory is to care for her baby, so I love myself the way that she loved me. And she loved me more than strawberry fields, and she loved me much better than the berries by our heels. And she loved me more than summer rain, and I so often wondered if I would ever feel that way again. Oh, and I feel that way again.
Beautiful. 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 Thank you so much, Janet and Ham. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to you. When I was thinking about and praying about my lesson for this week, and I was kind of looking for a title, and I usually try to get the title to the people who are publishing it. I try to get it out by Wednesday, but it doesn't always happen that way, and sometimes I don't really know what the title is going to be, and I just have to really continue to pray and listen. But this week I woke up, I think about Tuesday, and as I was waking up, had asked the question, what is it I need to learn and what is it I need to share? And when I woke up, I heard very clearly, there's only one solution. And I thought, okay, I'm listening. There's only one solution. So I got that was the title of my talk today. And so I really spent some time really listening to and thinking about what that really means and what that it was saying to me. And I got some really some wonderful insights and awarenesses about that. But sometimes I don't remember while I'm going through the week and what's going on in life and things that are going on to pay attention to listening to what I need to hear and what I need to share and that sort of thing. But I came across a story this week, and it was about a forgetful husband. Not that I would ever be anything like that, of course, but my wife might disagree with that assessment. But so this forgetful husband thought he had conquered the problem of trying to keep up and remember his wife's birthday and the anniversary and, and things like that. And so he opened an account with a florist, and that they provided him, he provided them with the dates and the instructions to send flowers, on the special occasions, and just a note from it that says, your loving husband. And so his wife was thrilled and just really loved that she was getting that kind of attention, and really was very appreciative of that, until one day he came in, there was a bouquet of flowers there, and he says, those are lovely flowers, dear, where'd they come from? Busted. Sometimes we get caught up in our schemes, don't we? I think Mark Twain said, no one has a good enough memory to be a successful liar. So I gave that up a long time ago because I knew I wasn't going to be good at it. Well, I was praying about it, and I got this idea, there's only one solution. And then Charles asked for a little bit of follow-up information about what that was about. And I realized what came to me was it's about spiritual problem solving. That ultimately, whenever we're confronted with or dealing with a particular problem in our life, ultimately there really is only one solution. And then, it sounds like, I'm sure everybody here knows that solution is God, right? Ultimately, in every situation and circumstance that we have in our lives, the solution is right there. It's actually right there in the midst of what we are seeing and experiencing as a problem. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You got any problems going on in life right now? Well, the reality is, even in the midst of that, there is something there that is already a solution for you. And yet we are not in a place where our vision is such that we're able to see and know the solution specifically. What we know and we tend to focus on is the problem. So, as I said, I heard that, and then the question, of course, goes, okay, well, now is to discover what the solution is, and the answer, of course, is the presence of God. The presence of God. God is ultimately the solution to everything that we, quote, consider to be a problem in our lives. So I was looking at the verse forgot to write down my verse number. Mark, I believe it was, well, interesting. I didn't write down my verse number, so I don't memorize those things. Jesus said, for the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, for your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough of its own. And I really thought, it's interesting, sometimes it's translated as each day has enough trouble of its own, but as I look back at this verse, it doesn't really say that. It just simply says, each day has enough of its own. And I really thought that really was a very profound difference in understanding, because it's really not saying that each day is necessarily filled with trouble. It's saying each day is filled with the solution. Each experience, ultimately, is filled with a solution. Everything that we are looking at and going on in our lives is actually a way that we can experience more of that presence of the divine if we are willing to allow that in our awareness and our consciousness. If we're willing to allow that to be there for us in some way, to share and to show us that presence. But it does take a choice, doesn't it? It does require us to make a choice. It reminded me of Emmett Fox's wonderful little pamphlet that's been put out through Unity and a number of other organizations called The Golden Key. And the Golden Key is very simple. If you're faced with a problem, stop thinking about the problem and think about God instead. If you're faced with a problem, stop thinking about the problem and think about God instead. It's the thing that we've heard over and over again. When you're dealing with something, you need to let go and let God. I was reminded of actually a wonderful article that was written by Bill Fisher, who was one of the actually instructors in the ministerial school many years ago before I actually wound up in the ministerial program. And Bill was a wonderful teacher, wrote a very excellent book called Alternatives. He wrote several wonderful books, but this one that really stuck out for me is called Alternatives. And it's a really wonderful, if you have friends who want to know more about what it is that Unity teaches, and really gets a clear translation from traditional ways of thinking in Christianity, and it's a very simple book, and it just simply gives you alternatives ways of understanding Scripture, different ways of understanding that are really in alignment with the metaphysical principles that are in the essence of what Unity teaches and what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore taught. So it's a great little book that I recommend. But one of the things that Bill said was, I hear that saying, let go and let God, but I think we got it backwards. He said, let God and let go. I think that's it's a valuable distinction. A valuable distinction, because it's a little harder to let go until we have actually been open to letting God. And the more we can allow ourselves to tune into that awareness that there's something significant and powerful and greater than our own ego consciousness at work in the circumstances of our lives, and we turn our attention to that, then we can be in a place more easily to let go of thinking that we've got to necessarily fix or change or make different whatever is going on. Because our minds are always attracting and creating, the switch of creating never gets turned off. Do you realize that? We sometimes think that, oh, well, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna meditate and I'm gonna pray and I'm gonna change everything and I'm gonna be a part of the creative process. And the reality is you're already a part of it, and it's going on right now, whether you understand it or recognize it or realize it or not. We're continually in that process of attracting. We're continually in that process of creating, and there's no off switch. Sometimes we wish there were an off switch. Wouldn't you agree? Sometimes we could just wish we could just turn, especially the things that, the mind chatter and the, as they say in the untethered soul, the crazy roommate. You know the crazy roommate? He's got this idea of we all have this crazy roommate inside of us. It's the critical voice, the monkey mind, the chatter. We all know it. We don't recognize it sometimes. We've all got this. We got a roommate that's absolutely bonkers inside there. And we often are taking this bonkers roommate's advice about life and how to fix things and solve problems. And it just, it was Einstein, I think, said you can't solve a problem on the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. So you're not going to necessarily solve the problems with the monkey mind, or the insane roommate is not going to be able to give you the solution to the problem, because the reality is the insane roommate is the author of the problem. Is that true? So part of our work is to learn how to stop listening to the insane roommate. If we're focusing on the problem and we're attracting and creating more of the problem, if we're focusing on the solution, we're attracting and creating more of the solution. So how do we do that? Well, one of the ways is to stop looking at the world out there for the solution and turn within and recognize that the solution to our problem is not more stuff, a new relationship, a new house, a new car, more money, more clothes, a new job, dare I say, a new church. That's not the answer. That's not the solution. We don't truly find the solution to any problem by looking out here in the world outside for the solution, because all that we're going to see and experience outside in the world is a reflection of the energy and the consciousness that's going on inside on some level of our being, whether it be conscious or unconscious. Confucius said, what the superior person seeks is in him herself. What the small person seeks is in others. And so part of our work is to begin to shift our energy and our attention to recognize that whatever the solution is, it's not necessarily looking for it and trying to find it out there. It's first trying to learn and realign ourselves with the true source of our good, the true source of our well-being, the true source of our light, the true source of our health, the true source of our abundance. We begin by recognizing and accepting the experiences in the outer world are reflecting of something going on inside our own energy field. Now, we often say, we don't really want to admit it sometimes, but we are not only so used to looking outside of ourselves for solutions out there in the world, but we're also very conditioned to looking outside ourselves for the source of the problem as well, aren't we? And I'm suggesting to you that's the same trap that we fall into, that we look for the source of our problems out here is actually at the heart of the problem. Does that make sense? So what we're doing, we're trained and conditioned to blame everything and everyone out here from keeping us from experiencing the good in our lives. As I read about in the 4T the program this week, I love this saying. It says, our biggest stumbling block is our inflated ego. Our biggest stumbling block is our inflated ego. Can you just see it? It's like a big beach ball right there in front of you. You know? That's the biggest challenge that we face. And the only real solution to any of the problems in our lives is to change consciousness, to change our energy, to change our focus. It's to change our vibrational energy. Rhonda Byrne, the author of The Secret, said, when you worry about something, you're using your immense power of imagination negatively. You're imagining the worst, and as you imagine the worst, you're bringing it to you. And when you're excited about something, you're using the power of your imagination positively, and you're imagining the best, and you're imagining the best, you are bringing that to you. We have a saying that Julie wrote up on our board, and I go by and see it every now and then, and I have to it's a great reminder. Abraham said that when you are out of vibrational alignment, there is no action that will solve the problem. Let me say that again, because I think it's a valuable understanding. When we're out of vibrational alignment, there's no action out here in the world that will solve the problem. And so the solution, ultimately, is to focus on aligning, to moving ourselves back into a place. Jesus said, seek first the kingdom. Seek first the kingdom. The kingdom is that place within us where we are really, truly aligned with our own unique divine nature, with the presence of the divine within our own being. The Christ in us, as Unity calls it, the Christ within. The presence of that light, that spirit that Jesus represents and showed us is within each and every one of us. And so our work is to first realign ourselves with that knowing of who and what we are. And then as we do that, we'll find that we're being given inspiration, we're being given guidance. Sometimes we're giving experiences that are completely out of the blue, that are a blessing to us because we have shifted our awareness and our energy into something that is attracting something to us that we may not even recognize that we're attracting to us. And so we get to experience the benefits of that shift, sometimes even before we're even conscious that we are creating it or that we're even focusing on that. When we're out of vibrational alignment, there's no action that solves the problem. You know, there was an interesting study that was done at Duke University some years ago that I came across, and it was a study on peace of mind. And I would say ultimately one of the things that when we're feeling and experiencing a challenge or a problem in our life, ultimately what our desire is to experience peace, to not be in that place of conflict, to not be in that place of stress, that place of concern or worry. Wouldn't you agree? So what we're really striving to do is move back in that place that Abraham calls well-being. Well, and the interesting thing is that the more we practice moving into that place of well-being, the more we attract to ourselves an experience of well-being. So here's some wonderful steps that they found, or ways that we can move back into that place of well-being. Number one is to let go of suspicion and resentment. The very act of nursing a grudge is a major factor in our own well-being. Nobody has any of those, of course, right? We let go of, and if you think about it, it really is letting go of the past. Letting go of the past. And unless we're willing to let go of the past and allow the past to be different for us and to shift our awareness and our energy and about it, then we're going to continually come back to that energy and we're going to continually repeat patterns in our lives until we are able to do what is necessary to release the energy around those circumstances and situations. I call it the great eraser, forgiveness. It's a great eraser. Unless we're willing to take the time to work with this energy of forgiveness and letting go of the circumstances and situations, we're going to find ourselves continually drawn back, not necessarily into the past. What we're going to do is we're going to take that energy that we experienced from the past and we're actually going to project it out into the future. You understand what I mean by that? We're going to make our decisions based upon our anxieties and our fears that we're going to have that same kind of experience again. And so we're going to put out there that same kind of energy, and as a very result, we're going to become magnets for that same kind of experience and same kind of energy. It may not be the same person. You may get to have the same kind of experience over again with somebody else. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So we create these patterns. So 2 is not living in the past. It's an unwholesome preoccupation with old mistakes and failures, and those keep us stuck. 3, not wasting time and energy fighting conditions you can't change. In other words, cooperate with life instead of trying to run away from it. Look for what is the possibility of good in this circumstance and situation. What is it that I'm trying, what is it I need to, what is the gift that the universe is trying to give me in this circumstance and situation? Now, that may be a challenge at times. Sometimes the gifts that the universe gives us don't seem to be wrapped up in bows. Have you noticed that? Yeah. Sometimes the gifts the universe gives us are the very things that call us forth from within ourselves to draw upon the energy of spirit, to draw upon greater possibilities, to draw upon greater strengths, greater love, greater wisdom, greater compassion, greater possibilities of life. Charles Fillmore says, we know that the kingdom of the heavens or kingdom of God is not a place in the skies, but an ideal state in creative mind ready to be ushered into the minds of men. It's a state of consciousness. It's a state of awareness of the presence of life, of love, of wisdom, of understanding, of joy, of peace, of possibilities. He goes on to say in Atom Smashing Power of Mind, we begin right where we are to bring forth the kingdom within us. So if we're spending a lot of time back in the past, we are basically not living from where we are now. Right now is the moment of power. There's only one place that you can make a shift. There's only one place that you can choose differently. There's only one time that you can make a different choice. And it's right now. And right now. And right now. And right now. Some time ago, I get tickled myself sometimes, but I remember on Facebook, status update, Tony is living in the present moment. And I put a little asterisk afterwards, or at least I was. Practicing being present to what is and accepting what is rather than trying to push it away is the very thing that will draw us back into alignment with an understanding that in every circumstance and situation, there's only one presence and one power. And the more we can remind ourselves of that, we begin to align ourselves back with that energy and that consciousness and feel that. And so what comes through us is the very thing that is needed to allow that circumstance or situation to become something that can be of value and beauty and significance for us. Does that make sense? We may not necessarily always be able to recognize that and see that in the midst of it because it's actually a culmination of energies that we've been holding for some time. And so we're in the process of shifting. We may not see immediate results. You have to be willing to allow the results to unfold. It's kind of like in Unity, we teach the power of affirmative prayer. And someone I remember saying to me, says, I tried that affirmative prayer once and it didn't work for me. Some of you get that. That's good. Affirmative prayer is not something that you do once. It's something that you continually do to shift your continually shift your thinking patterns and your thought processes. The Bible tells us, and we've come to know and to believe the love that God has in us. God is love. And the one who resides in love resides in God. And God resides in them. When we think about this idea of reside, that word that's been translated as reside has been translated as, one who abides in love, the one who dwells in love, the one who lives in love. All of these have been translations to that term, that word that's being used here, abide. And I really like that understanding and that awareness of living in love. That's ultimately who and what we are. And that's ultimately what we live in. There's only one presence and one power in this universe, and that presence and power is love. And the very solution to our challenge, to our problem, is ultimately in the very atmosphere, the environment, what we actually are living in right now. But it really manifests and it makes itself known to us by our waking up to that understanding and that awareness. So we're developing a consciousness of the power of this realignment with the energy and the consciousness of the one presence, which is love. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 38, it says, "This is the first and great commandment, that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." I'm going to suggest to you that a more accurate translation really is, the second is just like it, is the same. The second commandment is the same as the first. Loving your neighbor as yourself is also loving the divine. Loving your neighbor. And so when you find yourself in a circumstance or situation where you're experiencing a challenge or a conflict in your life, anybody ever had any of those? I do. The solution to that challenge or conflict, when you find you're experiencing someone's anger or even your own anger, the solution is a different energy, isn't it? Choosing a different energy, accepting a different, allowing a different energy. Is probably a better way of saying it. Mark Twain said, "It ain't those parts of the Bible that I can't understand that bother me. It's the parts that I do understand." Right? You know, it's really very simple. There really is only one solution, really, isn't there? It's really very simple. But as I often have said, that doesn't mean that it's easy. But I've also said that maybe, though, the belief system that says it's not easy is just that, a belief system. And maybe we can choose a different belief system. What if it really is easy and we just decided that it's hard, so therefore for us, it's hard? What if it really is easy to love one another? I always like to throw that out there as a possibility, you know? Because I think we can set ourselves up for thinking that something is hard just by the very belief that we think it's hard. We can set ourselves up for something being hard. So learning to love, learning to shift our awareness into a different energy, into a different vibration, learning to be open to the possibilities of a greater good coming into our experiences regardless of whatever seems to be going on out here in the world is ultimately the first commandment, isn't it? So, what are some ways that we can practice this? What are some ways that we can practice this one solution? First of all, recognizing that there really is only one solution. The Course in Miracles says there's only love or fear. Did I lock my microphone off? Nope, still working, good. There's only love or fear. Ultimately, we are going through our lives energetically vibrating from one of these energies, aren't we? And so just take a nice deep breath and just be open to noticing when you think about a particular circumstance or situation in your life, what energy do you have around that circumstance or situation? Is it one of love or is it one of fear? It's easy to notice, really, isn't it? It's not always necessarily easy to shift it away from it, or maybe it is. Maybe it's simply making the decision. I'm going to choose love. Of course, Miracles also teaches us I could choose peace instead of this. I could choose peace instead. What if we just said, you know, I'm not going to let this bother me. I know that there's only one presence here. I know there's only love here. I'm going to be open to that. I'm going to be allowing of that. I'm going to be willing to experience that. I'm going to be willing to feel that and to know that and to show that and to share that and to let that be my guide. So there's our homework for this week and probably the rest of our lives. Maybe the next several lives, I don't know. Our homework this week is very, very simple. I could choose peace instead of this. I can choose peace instead of this. I can choose love instead of fear. And then when you hear the crazy, insane roommate giving you all kinds of advice about how that won't work, go back to the love. I can choose peace instead of this. Have a great week. Let's move into our meditation time. We're going to have a wonderful song, and then we're going to do our meditation.
just thinking getting back into alignment is kind of like retuning your guitar. You get it in tune, then everything works better. And when you move them that much, they like to go back where they just were. This one. There we go. I used to fancy myself as a sparrow on the wing, playing games in the freedom of the wind. I used to fancy myself as a minstrel who would sing, playing tunes on a gypsy mandolin. But to be like the sparrow, you must fly or face the flame. You must know your weakness like you know your name. To live like the poet and roam from town to town, you must learn to be lost enough to be found. I used to fill up my days with four-leaf clover dreams, casting lots on the crossroads of time. I used to build my house from fate, clothed with words alone, not knowing I was naked in my rhyme. And to be like the sparrow, you must fly or face the flame. You must know your weakness like you know your name. To live like the poet and roam from town to town, you must learn to be lost enough to be found. I used to laugh at my loves as they turned from young to old, for the weakness in their hearts and in their ways. But that dark sky above, as it turns from black to gold, trades the homing instinct for a lonely grave. And to be like the sparrow, you must fly or face the flame. You must know your weakness like you know your name. To live like the poet and roam from town to town, you must learn to be lost enough to be found. You must learn to be lost enough to be found.
So take a nice deep breath as we move into our meditation time. just breathe in and out. And just allow the breath to flow. It's not necessary to control it or regulate it. Just simply allow it. And notice the breathing in and the breathing out. And as you breathe in, allow yourself to know that you are realigning. And let the words, I am, fill your heart. And as you breathe out, let the love, the word love, the thoughts of love, the feeling of love radiate from your heart. And as you breathe in, again, hear and feel, I am. Feel it in that heart center as a vibration, an energy, a knowing of source, of presence. And as you breathe out, let the words, the energy, the vibration of peace flow out through your heart. And so quietly and peacefully, take the next moment to let the breathing in and the knowing of I am, and the breathing out and the knowing and expression of love and peace be your mantra as we take this time to realign in the stillness and in the silence of our being. Breathing in, I am. Breathing out, love. Breathing in, I am. Breathing out, peace. Allowing each breath to expand the heart with the knowing and the expression of spirit, of light, of the I am. We give thanks. We give thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Let your awareness move back into this room, this time, this place. Take another nice deep breath and let your awareness be fully present. And when you're ready, let your eyes open.